Okay, let's go ahead and get started here. So the format of our training is going to start with a PowerPoint presentation, then I'm going to do a live demonstration of the software. We're also going to record this training so that we can post it online for folks that were unable to make it this morning. So our training agenda, we're going to go over the municipal process. So that's municipal information, sales validation, support, and ratio studies. We'll also talk about how to request an account if you don't already have one and take any questions that you might have. So we're going to start with municipal information. What has changed? Well, the towns can now electronically submit their local information to PVR. So this is the same type of questionnaire that you used to answer with your DA in person. You can now do that electronically. For those of you that answered your questions last year, those answers carried over to this year, so you just have to confirm that that's still accurate. You can also digitally upload documents, none required this year, so we're just going to skip over that. So starting off with your municipal homepage, when you log in, this is what you're going to see, and I'm just highlighting here on the top. We have our jurisdiction and year dropdown. So if you are someone that works in multiple towns, we can give you access to multiple towns with your same account. And you can also go back and look at last year's information by using that year dropdown that you find at the top left. So we're going to start by talking about municipal information. Again, this is basically just a questionnaire. Then we're going to talk about the equalization study, and then we're going to talk about support. On the right-hand side here of your home screen, you have your resources. So these are helpful links. You'll find this in a couple spots throughout the application where you can access relevant information to what you're trying to perform here. So if we go into municipal information, the first thing I want to highlight, you're going to find this throughout the application. We have our quick help. So at the top of the page, you'll find some help information about what you should be doing on this particular page. And if you click on that blue eye, that information icon, that will bring you to a help page specifically about this portion of the software. So in municipal information, we have three parts. We have your organization. So these are the individuals that work for the town. We have documentation. Again, no required documentation this year. And then questions. I think there are maybe 22 questions for you to answer. None of them are very difficult. It's just gathering information so the state has a good database of what's going on in town. And you can also see right here what is going on with whether or not you've submitted your review and if the state has looked at it. So you have a complete activity tracker here. We have our submit button on the top right. So when you're done, you can submit to the state. In order to submit, you have to have 5 people in your organization. I'll tell you who those people are. And you have to have answered all of the required questions. So if you click submit and you haven't done that, it will tell you what you're missing and prompt you to complete those activities. So for organization, we're looking for contact information for the assessor, the listers, so all of them, the town clerk, the tax collector, the treasurer, and the delinquent tax collector. So just contact info for those folks. There are more things you can do in order to track your personnel. We'll take a look at them, but all we're requiring is just contact information. So going into organization, once again, we have our help here up top. I also do want to highlight, you're going to see this style of table throughout the application. This top section is actually a search and a filter. So if I had multiple people in the organization, I could type in Patrick in that name box and it would filter down to just Patrick's. So you'll see this all over the place. We'll see it when we're looking at sales validation as well. So you can use this, for example, if you're looking for a particular sale, say you have a deed in front of you or a response from the buyer or the seller indicating special circumstances, you can quickly find that particular sale in the table by using these top search bars. You'll also find this action button throughout the application. This is how we edit individual rows in the table. So if I wanted to edit the information about Patrick here, I would use this action drop down to access that information. We have our create new button on the bottom right. So this is how we would add new folks to our organization. Simply click create new and it will bring up our form to input the contact information. So just taking a look quickly at how that would work. Simple add personnel form, basic information. Again, this is all we're looking for, just basic contact info for the folks in town. Once we have added that personnel to our organization, you can edit their contact info here. And we do have the optional ability to track additional information about each of these folks. This is purely for your benefit to have kind of a centralized place to put this information, not required. All we're looking for is the contact info. So here we're looking at activities, and once again, we have our actions drop down here if we wanted to edit that activity. So we have 4 different things that you can track about the folks that work in town, and you can do that by using the add button on the bottom right. So we have activities. So what duties do they perform for the assessing office in your town? Do they do general assessing? Do they value the commercial properties? Do they do assessment administration, such as processing transfers, et cetera? You can also track any certifications that those folks might have, any training that they might have taken towards those certifications, and any properties that they own in town. And again, all totally optional here. This is just kind of meant to be a centralized place to put information about folks that work in property valuation within the town. Once again, we have our search bars up here. So again, you'll see this style of table throughout the application. You can always use these search bars up top to filter your information, find what you're looking for. And again, remember, all we're looking for is the contact info. So you can optionally track their activities, trainings, and certifications in the system if you care to, but that is absolutely not required. We're just looking for the contact information. Just to circle back on a couple of key features, we have our help here on the top, always with that blue eye information icon, so you can get more help about this specific page. Remember, we have our search bars here at the top of all of our tables, so you can always use that to filter the information. Our actions button here, if you want to edit one row of information, so if you wanted to edit the information about Patrick, you would use this actions drop down to edit that, and then our create new button on the bottom right. So these are all things that you'll see pretty consistently in each of the modules. One other thing I want to highlight is we have our breadcrumb trail here on the top left. So you can see we are in Bridport, we are in the municipal information module, and we are within organization. So if I were to click municipal information, it would bring me up to the municipal information home. If I were to click Bridport, it would bring me up to the Bridport homepage. So be aware that breadcrumb trail will always be there for you, so you can use that to quickly navigate throughout the application. Documentation, we're going to skip over. You can attach documents to your municipal file, but there aren't any required this year. So we're going to go right to questions. So this is where you answer your annual questions from PVR. These questions are not tricky. I think the first one are, what are your town clerk's hours? So just basic information about your town so that PVR can have that in their database. Once you answer the question this year, the answer can be reused next year, and we'll take a look at that. And for those of you that did answer your questionnaire last year, you will be able to reuse your questions this year, so it should be a little bit less of a lift. So here we're looking at a few of the questions. These are literally the first 4 questions. They're pretty basic. So we can use our actions drop down to answer that question. You can see here the questions that are required and whether or not you have answered them. So you have to answer all the required questions in order to submit your municipal information to PVR. You can also see whether or not PVR has taken a look at these questions and answers yet. So just taking a quick look at how you answer questions. If we use our actions menu and go into answer a question, you'll see your question right here. What are your town clerk's hours? We have our answer down here. If we had answered the question last year, you'll see your prior year answer, and you can just click use prior year answer, and it will copy that over to be this year's answer. And you can edit that if you need to as well. So if you've already done this last year, it should be pretty quick, just a couple of clicks to get through this. Clicking save and next will bring you to the next question. Each answer is saved individually, so if you only have time to answer a couple and somebody comes up to the desk and you have to log off, it'll save your progress and you can come back in and restart at your convenience. So highlights of municipal information, you have to enter at least 5 personnel, those positions that I showed you. And when you log in and go to municipal information and go to the organization section, it will tell you those 5 positions that we're looking for in the quick help at the top. Documentation, there are no required documents this year. Questions, just answer all the PBR questions and click submit. So this should not be a heavy lift. This should only take 15, 20 minutes tops. If you haven't done it last year, if you did it last year, it should be much quicker. All your personnel will stay, as well as you'll have your prior year question answers. Again, clicking that submit button, it will tell you if you've answered all the required questions and if you put in enough personnel to satisfy that 5-person requirement, and then you'll just submit things to PVR. We also have our reports here on the top right. You'll find reports basically in every aspect of the application. So this will allow you to report on all the answers to your questions, and it will report out your personnel. If you logged their training and certifications, that will be on the report as well. And you'll see this in the sales section so that you can run out your sales lists. We'll talk about that a little bit more once we get in the sales validation section of things. Okay, so bear with me here for one moment here as I switch over my screen share, and we're going to do a demonstration of the municipal information portion. Okay. Okay, so all I've done here is logged in. I have here my drop down of available municipalities and years. Again, this is just our test server, so none of this is real. For those of you that have attended our previous trainings, you'll notice that we have a few more modules here displaying. We have our tax programs. This is where you're going to get to your current use TIFs, exemptions, homesteads, etc. So you'll see everything's very similar. We're having training on all of these. The homestead training, I know I've seen some of the folks that have already attended that. So you see the application kind of building out here. But let's talk about municipal information. So I'm going to go into municipal information here. Again, I've got my help. If I click on my blue eye, it's going to take me to help just about that particular page. So you'll find that throughout the application. We have our history here. I've been doing a lot of training on this. You see I've got resubmissions and submissions and so forth here in my activity tracker. So we'll go into organization. We have 3 people. So if you did this last year, you'll have the folks that you entered from last year will be waiting for you. So if they're all the same people, you don't need to do anything. So we can just create new to add a new person. I'll spare you my typing. You can put in the department they work for, the position that they're holding. And if they hold multiple positions, you can see that we can accommodate that as well. And then just basic contact information. So we'll save that. Now we have that new person added. I'm not very creative with my names, as you can see. So if we go into manage, this is where we can either edit their contact information if we need to, or add activities, certifications, or training. So this is a convenient place where you can track the training that you've taken. So if I go in, we can add any of these things. They are all relatively the same. If we do, I'm adding a training. Maybe I took IAAO 402, which I think is commercial appraisal. We took it through VALA. I took it today. You can also upload a file. So this is something new that we added this year. If you have a certificate of attendance, you can attach that as well, just to kind of keep track of it. It's great. I earned 5.5 hours of CEUs. So you can track your training here, just kind of a centralized spot. You can do the same thing for certification. If you have certifications, you can track those in here as well. And again, activities, if you want to track, I'm working 150% time apparently. So you can track the activities that you're performing for the town as well.
Hey, Pat, it's Jen. Sorry to interrupt. There's just a question in the chat about what is percent FTE, which was on that previous screen you were on.
Oh, sure. That's full-time equivalent. So 40 hours a week would be full-time.
Thank you.
That's weird. I didn't see anything in the chat, but yeah, please.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I figured before you get on to the next part, it'd be easier.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that's full-time equivalent. So if I go in here, FTE, full-time equivalent. So 40 hours a week, basically. So moving on here, we have our questions. And again, these are literally the first 4 questions. They're not tricky. So we can go in and edit. We have our question up here. I've already answered this, so you would just key in whatever your answer is, go save and next, and it will move you on to the next question. And again, if you get interrupted, you can save and next. That will save your progress, and then you can just return out of it, and it will save everything you've done, and you can come back and answer the rest of the questions. And I think it's 22 questions, if I'm not mistaken. Again, none of them are tricky. It's just basic information about the towns. You should be able to just fly through them and answer them. So once you're done, you click submit. And I have everything already completed. I've answered all of my questions, and I put in the correct number of people. So it's going to say I'm okay. If I was missing things, if I hadn't answered all the questions, if I hadn't put in enough people, it would tell me that I have unanswered questions and give me a hyperlink to go answer those questions. So in this case, I have met everything. So it's just saying once I submit this, everything's going to be locked down. Are you sure you want to do that? And I am not going to do it because I have another training where I'm going to have to use the same account anyway. So that is municipal information, meant to be pretty straightforward. We're going to move on into sales validation. I'm going to switch back over to my PowerPoint. And again, the DAs are going to go over this also. So I'll try not to be too redundant here, as they're going to go into more technical detail, as I'm mostly just talking about the software. So sales validation, I'm pretty sure everybody used the sales validation feature last year. So you're verifying sales information. So that's sale price, listed value, whether or not there were special circumstances, what the category code is, was there any personal property involved in the transaction? In other words, did a tractor come with the property? Was that part of the sale price? Were there any concessions? What was the acreage of the sold property? And then finally adding your lister comments. So the PTTR import process, so the property transfer tax return import process. So by and large, this PTTR process has not changed. Everything that goes on in the clerk's office is still the same. The clerk will add information, send it back to the Department of Taxes. The clerk won't record the transaction unless it has a completed PTTR form with it. So everything up until the clerk submitting the PTTR to tax after they've recorded the transaction is the same. Where it gets different, where it was different last year, is once it's recorded with the Department of Taxes, we pick it up. So previously you would do this work in VTAX and My VTAX. Now you're going to do it in VTPIE. So we pick up the PTTR returns, and some of you know we were on pause there for a little while. There was an issue with the clerk validation in the tax software. That has been resolved, so we're back on our regular weekly schedule of processing the PTTRs. So we pull in the PTTR, we link it to the grand list that we have on file. So for right now, we're using last year's grand list. We've been working with all of your CAMA vendors, Nemrick, Patriot, ProVal, Vision, to get exports from them. So you'll be able to update your grand list very shortly here. I think everybody's just about ready to deploy that. So we update the prior year listed value. If you're a reappraisal town or revaluation town, you do not need to enter those values. So I think we've got 25 or so, and I'll talk about those as we do sales validation. We'll update the acreage, we update the category code, and this is all based on the August submission. So these are basically your April 1st final values that you sent to PVR. So we update all that information. Then you go in for your local verification. So this is where you go in, verify all the information about the sale, add your special circumstances code if it wasn't an arm's length transaction, and then it goes off to state verification. So it didn't used to be like this, but now you and the state are using exactly the same system. So they can go in and verify your information and actually send those sales back to you if you need to make further changes. And there's a questions interface so they can ask questions about the sales as well. We'll talk about all of that in more detail. So one of the primary things you're doing, in addition to verifying the sale price, is determining whether or not this is an arm's length transaction. So were there special circumstances? So for determining your CLA, we want to use arm's length transactions, which is defined as a sale between two or more unrelated and unaffiliated parties, both acting independently and in their own self-interest. They should have equal bargaining power and information, leading them to agree upon a fair market price, right? So we're looking for sales that reflect a fair market price. What are things that might not reflect a fair market price? Well, these are our special circumstances. Maybe it was a family sale. So from parent to child, depending on the family, that could be a higher or lower sale price. Corporate or stockholder transactions, so related business parties. If it was a parent company selling to a subsidiary, that might not be market price. Any sort of forced sale, so a foreclosure or a tax sale, an estate sale that wasn't advertised, let's say, or a large change post-assessment. So in other words, as of April 1st, you had a single family home, and what sold in November was a single family home plus a barn. So your assessed value did not reflect the property that was actually sold. So that would be a large change post-assessment or pre-assessment. It could go either way. Basically, the property that you assessed was not the property that sold. All right, so let's take a look at the screens here. So as we go into our sales screen, by default, you're looking at your unverified sales. So this is your work queue, and it's always going to start out this way. You can flip this to verified to see the sales that you have verified but not released to the state yet, and we'll talk about that in a minute. A couple things to look at on this table. So we have questions here. So a little bit later in the year when your DAs start reviewing the sales that you sent to them, you might get questions back about those particular sales. You'll be able to see if you have a question right here. The last column here is span, and you'll notice the second from the bottom span is missing a span. That's because we couldn't identify the appropriate property, and this happens in less than 1% of the sales, so it really is a corner case. In the event that we can't find the appropriate property, we're going to rely on you to find the appropriate property. I'll show you how to do that. It's pretty quick and painless, but we'll see how that works as well. Again, we have our reports drop down here. So this is where you can get your list of sales. So you can always export your sales out to Excel. At any point, you can actually go back last year if you want to export those sales as well. So taking a look at the sales overview, there's a lot of information here. So we're just going to kind of talk through it quickly. We're on our overview tab here. So we have a properties tab. So this is going to show us grand list records that are linked to the sale. We have attachments, so you can actually attach things to the sale. This might be correspondence with the buyer or the seller. It might be a building permit showing that new barn that was put up to justify why your listed value is much lower than the sale price. And then finally, our questions tab. So this is where your DAs will ask you questions about the sales. And these will move forward in time. So starting here with the overview tab, and I do want to talk about first that send sales verification letter. So PVR does allow you to request that they send out a sales verification letter for you. So you can click that toggle if you think that there's something going on with the sale and it should get a questionnaire. I would caution you, please don't click it on every single sale or they might take it away. But if you think there's something going on and it would benefit from a verification letter, you can click that and one will automatically go out accordingly from PVR. So starting here on the top left, we have our PTTR information, so our property transfer tax return information. So all of this is straight from the PTTR. So this is as entered onto that tax form. So the first thing we have is our reference number. Doesn't mean a thing, just a sequential number that we assign to the sale every year so that you can say to your DA, I'm looking at sale number 1 rather than I'm looking at book 97, page 152. So just a shorthand, doesn't mean a thing, just sequential number. We have our buyer and our seller along with their mailing address. A feature we added a little bit later in the year, last year, was if you hover over the buyer or the seller, so just move your mouse over their names and stop moving it, it will pull up any additional buyers and sellers that there are on the property. We also have the property address as reported on the PTTR. So this whole block is just information from the PTTR, exactly as it was submitted on the PTTR. Then we have our grand list information. So this is pulling straight from the last copy of the grand list that we have from the town. So we have good information here. We've got our situs address, the mailing address, and the owner that we have there. So if we look at the situs address and the property address as reported on the PTTR, they're the same. So we feel pretty good about that this is the correct property. Then we have our verification section here, and we have 2 columns visible now. There are really 3 columns. So this first column here is the PTTR column. So this is the sale price and the listed value as reported on the PTTR form. You'll also notice that the total sale price is a calculation, and we'll see that when we go into verification. And it's a function of total sale price minus personal property minus concessions gives you that real property sale price that we see on the first line there. The second version is the lister's edit. So this is where you can edit any of this information if you don't agree with what was filed on the PTTR. The last column that I'm not showing is the state. So by default, the lister and the state agree, but the state can override things if they choose. But we track all 3 versions of that, what was said on the PTTR, what the lister said, and then what the state said. So we have a complete history. And as we look at ratio studies, we'll talk about how you can differentiate between those as well. So we have our verify button here. So this is how you verify your sales. So we click verify and it brings us over into this edit view. Again, you'll see real property sale prices grayed out. So it's just calculated as the total sale price minus personal property. And again, if there was a tractor or some other piece of personal property that wasn't real estate that was part of the purchase price, you would put that in there. If there were any concessions, it subtracts those as well. You verify the acreage. Again, all that's pulled from the grand list to begin with. And then we have our special circumstances and our category code. So again, special circumstances are to be used to indicate that the sale wasn't market value. Something was going on that made that sale price not representative of market value. And depending on the code that you choose, it might ask you for more information. So if you selected that it was a family sale, it's going to ask you for the relationship between the parties. If you select that it was an abutter sale, so your neighbor's buying the property, it's going to ask you for the span of the abutting property. So it will ask you for a little bit more information depending on the code that you choose. You can override the category code here and of course put in your comments, which will go to the state. So once you've verified, you'll have the option to submit an individual sale to the state. So if you're totally done with it, we do encourage you to submit the sales to the state. The faster you get the sales into your DA's hands, the faster they can review them, and then the faster you'll get your CLA. So we do encourage you to submit it to the state. And it's kind of like a football. Once you send it to the state, it's out of your hands. You can always run a report to view your sales, but once you submit it to the state, you can no longer see them or edit them. That being said, the state can send all of your sales or one of your sales back with a click. So don't hesitate to send your sales in. If you need them back, you can absolutely have them back if you need to make edits. Again, one or all of them. But sending them to the state early allows your DA to get to work on their verification and finish this whole process in a timely manner. So if you are done, click submit, send that off to the state. If you're not, you can absolutely keep it. If you think there's going to be more information forthcoming, you don't need to click submit. You can just click that right-hand arrow there that you see right next to verify, and that will bring you right to the next sale. So the corner case. If we can't find the correct property in your grand list, and most often it's just a typo on the span on the PTTR, but if we can't find that property, you won't be able to verify. You will have to be able to attach a property. So you won't have a verify button if we couldn't find the property. So you can either click on the properties tab or click this hyperlink, and it will prompt you to search for the correct property. Once you do that, you'll be able to validate as normal. So if we're looking for a property, you can look for it by address, by owner, by span number, click search, pick the correct property, and then click add. Once we do that, we'll be able to verify our sale as normal. So once again, once you've verified a few sales, if you come back out to the sales home screen, you can flip your toggle, which by default is on unverified, switch it over to verified, and you'll be able to see the sales that you have verified. You also have a release button here. So this is to release all of your sales to the state. So this will send every sale that you've already verified but have not released off to the state. So this is how you send over everything in bulk. All right, give me one moment here as I switch over. We'll take a look at sales verification in the app. I'll just turn off my PowerPoint and switch over to the demo. Okay. So once again, in my test server here, I'm going to go to equalization study. I've got my help right up here. I'm going to go to sales validation. And I have all of the sales that I have not verified yet. So if I switch over, I can see all. If I switch over to verified, I don't have any verified yet. So we're going to verify a couple and take a look at what that looks like. So if I go in here, once again, I have my information from the PTTR. If I hover, I have other buyers and sellers. I don't have any. We have our information from the grand list. We have our information from the PTTR and our lister edit, both of which agree by default. By default, everybody agrees. We have harmony by default in this process. We have our properties tab here, so we can see the property that is attached. Now, if the wrong property is attached, you can remove it and just add an additional property. So the same process that you would go through if we couldn't find the span, you can do to switch the property if we got it wrong. We have attachments here, so you can add an attachment. Again, it could be a building permit, it could be correspondence from the buyer and the seller. And we have our questions here, so eventually your DA will be asking you questions and you'll get emails saying that a question is available. And it's just a message board style format. So looking at verifying a sale here, pretty simple. We just click verify. You can pick a special circumstances code if you want. If I click family sale again, it's going to say, give me the relationship of the grantor and the grantee. We'll say parent-child. Click verify. Now that sale is verified. You'll notice things highlight. So nothing on the PTTR indicated that it was a family sale, but I just said it was a family sale. So it's going to highlight here just to cue my eyes that something is different between what the PTTR and what I have said. So I can click submit to send this to the state, or I can just click next here to go to the next sale. We verify it. We can change our listed value. We can change our sale price. Again, we can add our special circumstances. If we just want to add some notes, if we're not quite done, we could just click save and it won't actually verify the sale. If you are done, you can click verify. And then if I click submit, it's going to send that off to the state. And if you were watching closely, it moved me to the next sale very quickly. So you'll basically just go through and verify your sales like that. Again, if you want to send a sales verification letter, you can click this button right here. that will prompt the state to send a sales verification letter. Again, only do that for sales that you think would benefit from it. Don't do it on all the sales, otherwise they might take the button away from you. Once it's sent, you'll see the date that it was sent. They go out once a week on Tuesdays. So yeah, that's basically verification of sales. And I know later in the day, the DAs are going to have a bit more technical information about verifying sales. So this is really just how to do it within the application. Now I've got my one family sale here that I verified and didn't submit to the state. And I can go back to all. And once again, you always have your sales reports here. So even if you submit it to the state, it goes away from this table. It is always in your reports drop down there. So you can always have access to it. So I'm going to switch back over to my presentation here. We've got just a couple more things to cover. So support. So the support module is actually communication between you and your DA. So I guess this is a good time to talk about when do you call Axiomatic and when do you call your DA. So if you know what you want to do, but you can't make the system do it, or you don't know how to do it in the system, that's Axiomatic technical support. You forgot your password, you can't log in, you need an account, all that sort of stuff. That's Axiomatic tech support. If you need process help, for example, if you don't know how to appropriately value a current use property, that would be your DA. So if you don't know what you should be doing, that's your DA. If you know what you should be doing, but you can't figure out how to do it in the application, that's Axiomatic. So we have the support module here. This is communication with your DA. And this really spawned from turnover both at the state and at the municipal level. So this gives you a spot where you can ask a question, and maybe it's a question that you have every year because you only do something once a year. And it will kind of live here in the repository. So if there are new staff at the state or at the municipality, these questions and answers will live on here as kind of a knowledge base for your municipality. So if we go into support, once again, just reminding you that we have our breadcrumb trail here on the top left. So clicking Bridport would bring me back up to the Bridport homepage. We have our support topic here I've already asked, and we have our actions button as we saw for municipal information. And we can create a new topic. That's how we ask a new question of our DA. And it's just a message board style format. So you ask a question, your DA will log in and respond to it. You can reply to it. And this will just kind of live on as kind of a knowledge base for your town. The last bit we're going to talk about, and this will be available to you later in the week, are ratio studies. So municipalities will actually have the ability to create their own ratio studies. So you can do your own stats. You won't need to do it in Excel anymore. The system will do it for you. We'll talk about the different options here. But the main difference that I want to focus you on, and we'll see this once we're in the application, is you can choose to use municipal values or you can choose to use state values. And if your DA has not done a review, those are exactly the same values. So municipal and state agree until the state does their review. So if your DA has gone through and reviewed all your sales, and I'll show you where you can see that, you can run a ratio study with your town values and run a ratio study with the state values and see what those differences are. And that's the primary function that we're going to focus on today as I show it to you. So bear with me again here as I switch over and I'll show you how the ratio studies work. And first we'll look at how to just do them very quickly, and then we'll look at some of the finer options here. So bear with me as I switch over my display once again. Okay, so first we're going to talk about support. Remember that message board between you and your DA. You can see I've got quite a few. You can pick your topic. Maybe it's exemptions. So we put in our question, we click save, and now an email went off to your DA and said, hey, Pat's Test Addison site has a question, and they can go in and answer your question. As you can see, these questions kind of live on. So this becomes a knowledge base for the town. So if you have something, those questions that come up every year because you only do something once a year, you can ask your DA here, they can answer it. And then if there's a new person in town, they can come refer to the support knowledge base and maybe see some common questions and answers without having to re-answer them. So that is support. Again, this goes to your DA. This isn't tech support for Axiomatic. So again, process questions. If you don't know what you should be doing, that's a DA question. If you know what you should be doing, but you can't figure out how to do it, that's an Axiomatic question. So let's take a look at ratio studies. And again, you might not have noticed, but you have a workflow tracker here. So you can see that we have verified 42 of the 95 sales. We've released 41 to the state, and the state has reviewed 9. So if you look here and the state has reviewed 0, you can be assured the state values and the local values are the same because they haven't done any review. So let's take a look at how you can run ratio studies. So we have a bunch here, and these are an annual thing. So I'm in Addison 2022. So these are my 2022 ratio studies. So to create a new study, all we do is create the study. And if you just want to squint and do nothing else, just leave it like this. This will be totally fine. You can click Quick Create, and within about 5 minutes, you'll have a ratio study. So this, much like the CAMA uploads, I know we had a lot of people that were in the Homestead CAMA upload training. This is a batch process that runs every 5 minutes and calculates whatever ratio studies need to be calculated. So this is one of those things that you can kind of kick it off, go grab a cup of coffee, come back, and you should be all set. So again, if you just want to squint and do it the simple way, just create a study, quick create, go grab a cup of coffee, come back, you'll be good to go. A little more options, you can click custom, and the only thing you really need to worry about is state or local. So if you want to see what it would look like with your values versus the state's values, you can choose these options. And again, if the state hasn't done the review, this is going to be the exact same values. But again, you can just not bother with any of that and just do quick create, and it's going to make your study. And again, in about 5 minutes, you'll get your values here. I will caution you, you'll see some of them have no sales, so you get no ratio. The ratio is just 1. You don't get a COD because there's no sales. If there are less than 5 sales, it's never going to be significant. That's one of the business rules. So basically, once you have your ratio study, you can use this report dropdown, and I don't have any permissions, but you can use this report dropdown to get your what would become your certified sales sheet. So same exact report you would get from the state. You can also look per category code here. We call it the strata report. But basically, this is the exact same ratio study the state runs. So you can get, yep.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I had a quick question from Linda. So she's asking, we don't have this yet, question mark?
It'll be at the end of the week.
Oh, okay, end of the week, Linda.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. And basically, this is exactly what the state's doing. It's the exact same interface. It's the same reports. The difference is you can't certify them. So it's same, except as a municipality, obviously you can't certify the results. So once you finish verifying your sales, you can absolutely run a ratio study, see what your CLA will be before the state does their review. And when the state is doing their review, you can also run a ratio study and kind of see how things are progressing. So this will be available to you at the end of the week. Once the state finalizes things, you won't see the state studies until they've certified. But once they certify them, you'll see them right in here. And this would say like Addison 2022 certified. So this coming year, once things are being finalized, you'll be able to see them right in the application as soon as that's done. So a bit more transparency for you there as well. But again, the major points here, if you want to keep it simple, just create a study and do quick create. And it's going to create the study for you. It'll do all the stats in about 5 minutes. You'll get the exact same report you used to, just won't be certified. You won't be able to certify it. If you want to be a little more advanced, you can flip this over to custom. and choose between your state and local values if you want to see if there's a difference between them. So this will be available for you at the end of the week. Again, this is exactly what the state does. So you have the same interface that the state has, same calculations the state would be doing. So just a little more flexibility there for the municipalities. I've got a couple.
Christy just wanted to make a quick comment that when you run sales, that will represent your town sale ratio, not your CLA, because the CLA includes utility and current use adjustments.
That is a very good clarification. Yeah, so you can run ratio studies, so you can get your individual ratios for your town, for your classes, and for your categories, but this is not equalizations. This is not your final comp sheet, which is, I think, the clarification that Christy was making, and your CLA comes from your final comp sheet. So this is the first piece of the puzzle, and thank you for that clarification. This is not the answer to the problem. So just some recommendations for success. If you're new to this, start with municipal information. Pretty straightforward. It'll get you familiar with the flow of the application. You can then move on to sales validation. Keep in mind a couple key program features. You've got your breadcrumb navigation there on the top left. You've got your integrated help, and you have your actions menu to edit individual items within a table. And I think most of you I've seen at the prior couple trainings, but we're also doing training on homestead and CAMA uploads now. I'm going to be moving right over into exemptions and the rest of the phase 2 rollout here pretty rapidly. So keep your eye out for new trainings. If you do need an account, if you don't already have an account, you can get one at request.vtpie.org. You'll get an email from our support email here. It'll have an activation link. We'll ask you for the standard 3 security questions. You'll create a password. I apologize, the password is just as annoying as every other password. Uppercase, lowercase, letter, number, symbol, etc. And you can't reuse your past 3 passwords. So apologies for that, but it is for security. So if you need an account, you can request one there. Training and help. We have recorded this training session, so we'll be posting this online. I do want to emphasize this application is meant to help you work with the state. It's not meant to completely supplant your relationship with the state. So by all means, continue to contact your DA as you normally would. Please also reach out to Axiomatic support if you need assistance. Again, the distinction there, Axiomatic support, you know what you want to do, but you can't seem to make the program do it. Your DA or PVR, you don't know what you should be doing and you need help figuring out what you should be doing. That's your DA. We have our support information there on the right-hand side. You can email us, support@axiomnh.com, or use the phone. And then that bottom link, if you don't have an account but you need one, request.vtpie.org.